It's the 23rd of May 2021. It's just 5 nautical miles off the coast of Barbate in Spain. Cornelius is sailing for the first time again in 2 years, as he's had to take a break because of the pandemic. It's a sunny afternoon when Cornelius suddenly notices something that looks like a black fin in the waves of the sea. He read about the strange orca sightings and damaged rudders, but because he doesn't see the black fin appear a second time, he stays relaxed. Cornelius calms down on the fact that orca confrontations have only been individual cases, not knowing that he is about to become one of them. 45 minutes later, the boat is struck by a powerful strike, spinning the boat around and almost knocking Cornelius unconscious. 6 orcas are viciously attacking the rudder of the boat, trying everything to make it immobile and sink it to the depths below. But what are the motives behind such an attack? What exactly is the animal that's doing it? And most importantly, how does Cornelius survive such a thing? In today's video, you'll see why these intelligent animals are suddenly hunting down boats, whether humans are in danger, and what really lies behind the behavior of these fascinating marine mammals. Science has made surprising discoveries that challenge many previous theories. And what makes these majestic predators behave in such unusual ways? Well, the answer may be more complicated than you think. Framing the orca. The big cute-looking dolphin that you see on television or in the aqua park is one of the most compassionate and intelligent, yet also one of the strongest and most brutal predators on Earth. We often tend to only focus on the playful side of them, completely forgetting what deadly killer orcas are. When we see a great white shark, we naturally feel some sort of fear and would be hesitant to come close to it. The fierce and dangerous look immediately signals to our brain that we should do everything not to get too close. This doesn't apply to orcas, however, despite them being the great hunters of great white sharks who we fear so much. The main reason for that, despite massive cultural and movie influences on sharks, is the orca's naturally friendly-looking appearance. They visually radiate a peaceful feeling with their smile-looking pattern, and the orca's bite force is a key element in its role as a top hunter of the seas. With an estimate force of up to 19,000 pounds per square inch, the orca is capable of overwhelming even the most resilient meal. This immense force allows it to penetrate the thick skin and tough flesh of large marine animals like seals, sea lions, and even whales, and its powerful jaws and sharp teeth are perfectly adapted to grasp, tear, and crush its prey, an ability that is essential for survival in the often harsh and competitive marine habitats. An adult human has a bite force of around 162 psi, meaning the orca bites with more than 100 times than the force of a human being. Even the king of the jungle, the lion, cannot compete with that bite force. Interestingly, the orca even smashes the infamous Tyrannosaurus rex, who is said to have had a bite force of just 8,000 psi, and was one of the strongest biters in the prehistoric world. The numbers do speak for themselves, and it's not surprising the orca is one of the most efficient and feared hunters out there. They're one of the very few animals that can be found in waters all around the world, from the freezing Antarctic Ocean to the hot coasts of Gibraltar. Orcas have spread all around the globe, and so they've developed differently in each and every region. Antarctic orcas can reach an astonishing length of about 9 meters, while Iberian orca populations consist of individuals about 6 meters in length. However, they're not found exclusively in oceans. Orcas have actually been swimming in freshwater rivers in the United States, Canada, and even Japan. We refer to them as orcas in this video, but they're also known as killer whales. And the scary thing is that while it's translated from Spanish, it's actually been mistranslated and should correctly be seen as whale killer. They serve their name quite well. Orcas have indeed been seen hunting down and killing blue whales, and since the year 2020, more than 500 documented cases have revealed an ominous pattern. What began as isolated strange encounters has become a full-blown problem. Once prized as majestic companions for sailors, orcas have now become a source of panic at the mere sight of them. Scientists have determined that a specific group is behind it, the so-called Gladys pod, a group of young males who have regularly been sighted, similar to a youth gang that marks its territory. A particularly well-documented incident took place in June of 2023, where a Dutch sailing team had been surrounded by several orcas in the middle of the sea. Thanks to cameras on board, they were able to capture the event. Footage showed orcas repeatedly approaching the rudder with incredible precision, as if they knew exactly what they were doing. In each and every attack, the orcas follow a clear pattern: slowly approach the boat, dive underneath, and deliberately ram into the rudder. Not the propeller, not the hull, but always the rudder, as if they've learned a special technique for disabling the boats. Sailors are then left completely helpless. When a 6-ton marine mammal decides to attack your boat, your options become limited. Many report trying to scare the animals away with noise or objects or even flares, but nothing has ever worked. The killer whales won't let go of the boat until they've absolutely destroyed the rudder. The consequences of the attacks become significant. Numerous boats have had to be towed away, damaged, and some have even sunk. And in recent years, at least 4 have been taken down by killer whales, many others being severely damaged. For some sailors, this means financial loss of tens of thousands of dollars, and for all, it means absolute fear for their next sailing trip. Interactions often occur in areas with high tuna populations, and scientists suspect a connection. Perhaps the orcas are refining their hunting skills by using the rudders of boats as practice targets. But are the orcas even able to do something like this? The growing concern among sailors has already led to route changes. Many will now avoid the known hotspots, while others only venture out in convoys, hoping that there's safety in numbers. But what everyone really wants to know is, why are they doing this? Is it a sign of aggression? Is it revenge for something that humans have done? Or is it just a game for them, kind of like a trending sport amongst the youth? The truth is, the attacks are not random. The patterns are just too clear and the purpose too obvious. These intelligent marine mammals display coordinated behavior that they pass on and refine amongst themselves. What began as a single encounter became a veritable tradition amongst orcas. They are much more than attackers of boats, and while we might fear them as being killer whales, the name hides a fascinating misconception, because they are the largest member of the dolphin family. Much like bats, which are mistaken and thought of as flying mice, orcas suffer from persistent prejudice that overshadows scientific fact. The name conjures up images of bloodthirsty sea monsters when the reality is quite different. Attacks on humans are virtually unheard of in the wild, and the discrepancy between their fearsome reputation and their actual behavior is one of the biggest misconceptions in the animal world. They can reach a speed of up to 45 kilometers per hour as they glide majestically through the sea, and there's a record holder among them that's been clocked at 56 kilometers per hour. Upon first glance, they may not look like a typical top-quality predator, but rest assured, their intelligence coupled with incredible power makes them one of the most dangerous on the planet. Over the course of their evolution, orcas have adapted perfectly to a wide range of habitats. Different populations have specialized in a specific hunting technique and prey. Of particular interest is the Iberian orca, which lives in the Strait of Gibraltar and is quite different from other populations. The group has special characteristics that make them unique. At 5 to 6.5 meters in length, they are significantly smaller than their counterparts in many parts of the world. They've also developed special hunting techniques that are perfectly adapted to their environment and their main prey, that being tuna. One surprising feature of the Iberian orca is they are genetically isolated from other populations. Unlike orcas in Norwegian or Icelandic waters, they have little contact with anything outside of their immediate environment. And this isolation contributes to the development of unique behaviors that cannot be observed anywhere else in the world. The Iberian orca population is facing a dramatic problem. There are only about 35 to 50 of them left. This alarmingly low number has led to them being classified as endangered by the Spanish Ministry of the Environment. And so, we're talking about a small group who's on the brink of extinction and is suddenly making headlines around the world. Another fascinating detail is the pronounced sexual dimorphism of the orca. Males are easily recognized by their impressive dorsal fins, which can be over 1.5 meters high, rising out from the water like a sail, while female fins are much smaller and sickle-shaped. The animals have developed complex social structures and cultural behaviors as well. Much like humans, they pass on specific hunting strategies to the future generation. The cultural transmission of knowledge is one of the reasons why scientists find them so fascinating. It shows us that they're highly evolved social creatures and not the feared monsters that they're often portrayed as. Their ability to adapt to new situations and find innovative solutions is particularly remarkable. Iberian orcas, for example, have learned to chase tuna until they're so exhausted that they become easy to catch. Some have even developed the technique of stealing tuna from fishermen's long lines, a clever, if even annoying strategy against the fishermen. The orca's human-like brain. The impressive adaptability of killer whales is no accident. They have brains that are in some way superior to the human brain. Just imagine an animal having more of the special nerve cells that make emotions and social bonding possible than we do. When we talk about animal intelligence, orcas are almost always at the top of the list. It's understandable since their brains are the second largest in the animal kingdom. But size alone is not what makes them so special. It's their internal structure that continues to amaze science. Particularly fascinating are the so-called spindle cells. The special nerve cells, long thought to be uniquely human, are responsible for emotional abilities and social bonds. Surprisingly, orcas have about 4 times more of these cells than humans do. This enormous number of spindle cells is evident in their daily lives. Orcas coordinate complex hunting strategies in which they work together in perfect harmony to create waves that wash seals off of ice floes, a behavior that shows direct parallels to their interactions with boats. The limbic system, a part of the brain that helps to process emotions, is exceptionally well developed in orcas. Researchers have observed orca mothers trying to carry their dead calves to the surface for days on end, exhibiting mournful behavior. They seem to feel genuine empathy and exhibit behaviors that indicate a complex and emotional life, much like humans have. Further evidence of their remarkable intelligence is the ability to recognize themselves. In experiments, orcas have shown that they can recognize themselves in a mirror, specifically examining unusual markings on their own body, an ability possessed by few species other than humans. This test is considered an important indicator of self-awareness and self-understanding. Orcas' cognitive abilities go even further than that. When hunting, they show remarkable problem-solving skills, and some groups have learned to turn sharks over to immobilize them, while others will deliberately kill whales by exhaustion alone. They can plan for the future and adapt their strategies to new situations, and under captivity, they've even learned how to use fish as baits for birds, a sign of true ingenuity. But what does it all mean for their interactions with boats? If orcas have such impressive cognitive abilities, we have to assume that their behavior towards boats could be conscious and purposeful. The specific way in which they interact with the rudders, which is not by accident but by design, would suggest a thoughtful approach. Research would suggest that they may communicate with each other and coordinate their actions. Their cognitive abilities allow orcas to learn new behaviors and pass them on within their own social groups. And in fact, in Alaska, one pod was observed developing the technique of driving whales into shallow water, a strategy that then spread to other pods. This cultural learning may explain why the behavior toward boats has spread so rapidly. It's not a matter of simple imitation, though. Orcas actually understand why a particular approach works and can adapt it to new situations. The flexibility of thought makes them incredibly successful and may also explain why they interact with boat parts in such a targeted way. The orca's amazing brain structure will also explain why they're so adaptable and thrive in virtually any marine habitat. Their intelligence allows them to develop new strategies, a trait that has to be considered when studying their interactions with boats. Orcas' cognitive abilities are just part of what makes them so fascinating. In their world, there's a family structure that dwarfs even the closest human family bond. Because unlike us, orca society is led by the oldest female, a phenomenon rare amongst non-human mammals. And when we talk about family, we humans often think about children leaving home and letting go, starting up their own family and household. But with the orca, it's fundamentally different. Male orcas never leave their mother, staying with her for life, and this bond can be for over 80 years at times, like an invisible tie that never breaks. At the center of every orca pod is the matriarch. The oldest female is not only the leader, but also the repository of the group's collective wisdom. With decades of experience, she will guide the group through hunting grounds, deciding when to migrate, and more. This relationship between mother and son is particularly close. Close, in fact, that male orcas often go into deepful mourning after the death of their mother and have a significantly higher risk of mortality. They're like strong trees whose roots will suddenly lose their hold. A fascinating aspect of orca society is the menopause in females. This phenomenon is extremely rare in the animal kingdom. In fact, female orcas can live up to 90 years but stop reproducing about the age of 40. This means that they are non-reproductive for more than half of their lives, an evolutionary state that at first seems to make no sense. However, science has found an explanation. Grandmothers play a crucial role in the social structure, and instead of having offspring of their own, they invest energy in raising their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, passing on their valuable knowledge of things like hunting grounds, food sources, and survival strategies to the younger generations. This transfer is invaluable to the survival of the entire pod. The strength of the bonds in orca families also becomes evident in the way that they support each other. Sick or injured group members are not left behind. The group will adjust its pace to support the weakened animal. This deep form of care and cooperation resembles a living network of mutual responsibility that goes far beyond the usually loose family structures of modern human society. And where we humans will often drift apart, these marine mammals stay connected for life, like an old oak tree whose branches never fall far from the trunk, no matter how big that they grow. When we look at the strong family bonds, it also becomes easier to understand why behaviors like boat interaction can spread so quickly within the orca population. Knowledge and behaviors are not only passed down from generation to the generation, but also shared amongst the peers, and the newly discovered behavior, whether it be a hunting trick or simply playing with boats, is quickly observed, learned, and imitated by other group members. The social learning ability explains why boat interaction spread so quickly. What may have begun as a random discovery by an individual animal quickly becomes a fad within the entire group. The close bonds between orcas ensures that information and behaviors are then passed down. The tight social network of the orcas only works because of a communication system that's truly beyond our imagination. And while we humans communicate with words, orcas use a complex system of clicks, whistles, and songs in order to coordinate hunting strategies while socializing with each other. This underwater communication network resembles an intricate symphony whose notes and melodies continue to puzzle scientists. If you've ever been underwater, you'll know how difficult it is to see. It's not a problem for orcas, though. They've developed an underwater X-ray vision called echolocation, emitting sound waves that bounce off of objects in their environment and then return as echoes, and the technique allows them to navigate precisely, which is critical to their hunting success, especially in murky water. Imagine being able to see with your voice. That's a superpower that orcas have. Different populations of killer whales have developed their own dialect, which are different from one another, much like human language. These dialects are culturally transmitted and contribute to group identity. They're like an acoustic fingerprint that instantly reveals the community to which an orca belongs. Orcas from different regions actually speak different languages, making their social structure extraordinarily complex. Within those dialects, scientists have made amazing discoveries. Orcas have names for individual members of their group. They can actually address each other specifically, an ability that's only been seen in very few species. When an orca hears its name, it will respond, showing an understanding of individual identity. This means that killer whales do have a specific vocabulary tailored to individual group members. Orcas' communications show full complexity during hunting. When hunting a fast prey, they coordinate sophisticated strategies through precise patterns of communication. They'll split up, surround the prey, and constantly communicate position and next moves, and it works like a real-time strategy game, wherein each player knows exactly what to do without anyone taking control. The coordinated cooperation would be impossible without a sophisticated communication system. Even more amazing is the ability to pass on knowledge from one generation to the next. Young animals learn not only hunting techniques from their parents, but also the specific words and phrases of their group, and this social learning proves that orcas have a form of culture that's passed on through communication. They teach their offspring both practical skills and an entire language worldview. However, it also raises an intriguing question. Could orcas communicate with each other during boat interactions and coordinate their approach? The evidence would suggest that they do. The precision with which multiple orcas attack the oars together suggests that they are in constant contact during action, and they may be communicating about when and how to attack while giving each other feedback about success, much as they do in their natural hunting. The importance of this ability to communicate becomes enormous. It allows new behaviors like boat interactions to spread quickly through the group, and an individual orca discovers something interesting, perhaps by accident, and then communicates that discovery to the others. Within a short time, it becomes group behavior. It's kind of like a viral video that's shared on a social network, except that the orca's social network consists of their underwater symphony of clicks, whistles, and songs. The orca's close bonds within the pod are essential to their survival, but behind the fascinating communication lies an existential struggle that drives all of their behavior. Just imagine your main source of food, a large and fast fish, suddenly disappearing. It's exactly the challenge that Iberian orcas faced when the bluefin tuna became nearly wiped out. The bluefin is the lifeline of the Iberian orca. Measuring up to 4 meters in length and weighing about 650 kilograms, it appears as a colossal shadow, gliding majestically through the ocean currents. A successful catch of these ocean giants can feed an orca family for several days, which is an essential source of energy for the small Iberian population. The story of Iberian orcas and tuna is a dramatic one. Over the past few decades, massive overfishing of bluefin tuna has caused their population in the Strait of Gibraltar to plummet. The consequences for the orcas have been devastating. Without enough food, the already small population has been pushed to the brink of extinction, and the future of the orcas literally hang in the balance. What makes the Strait of Gibraltar so special for these hunters, though? It's a natural bottleneck on the tuna migration route. As the mighty fish migrate between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean, they have to swim through this narrow passage, and the orcas take full advantage of this geographical feature, hunting where their prey is concentrated and easier to catch. A clever strategy for a specialized group of hunters. It's truly impressive to see how these marine mammals will coordinate their hunt, a perfect interplay of communication, strategy, and endurance. Fortunately, the tide has turned for both species. Thanks to more strict international fishing quotas, the bluefin tuna have begun to rebound in recent years. With the return of this vital food source, the behavior of the orca has also changed significantly. The lifeblood of the ecosystem began to pulsate once again, benefiting both marine mammals and, indirectly, the sailors who pass through the waters. The recovery of the tuna stocks have led to a fascinating change. With more food available, not only has the birth rate of orcas increased again, but their daily behaviors also change fundamentally. With full stomachs and less stress, the intelligent animals become more playful, experimental, and curious, and the improved food situation suddenly gives them time for leisure activities, as if after years of struggling to survive, they finally have the capacity to play and explore. This excess energy may be the key to understanding the interactions with boats. The curious marine mammals begin to take interest in the strange objects passing through their territory, and perhaps the rudders are particularly interesting with their movement in the water or remind them of some aspect of their hunting techniques. The mysterious orca attacks. What the media calls an orca attack reveals a surprising truth. Scientists deliberately don't speak of attacks, but of interactions, and this subtle distinction is crucial to our understanding of what really happens between these majestic marine mammals and boats. The typical encounter follows an obvious pattern. The animals approach the boat slowly and cautiously, as if they're scanning the environment and the boat first. And once they decide to attack the rudder, they accelerate quickly to get to the target. This cautious approach is in direct contrast to the image of an angry predator, as they appear to be exploring the foreign objects in their territory. Their selective interaction with the boats is particularly striking. The animals focus specifically on the rudders, while leaving the rest of the boat completely untouched. And the precise interest strongly suggests curiosity of play behavior and not aggression or destruction. More interestingly, it's mainly young orcas that will participate in these interactions, and they turn it into a coordinated group activity, often taking turns to hit the oars. This approach becomes similar to the typical play behavior of young animals trying out a brand new skill or practicing behaviors together. Even these seemingly harmless encounters can be threatening from a human perspective. Even if a killer whale, which weighs several tons, only lightly bumps an oar, the force can be enough to cause significant damage. However, it doesn't change its true intent. It's like a high-spirited dog accidentally knocking over a valuable vase while also in play, and destruction is not the goal but an unintended side effect. For sailors who find themselves in such a situation, there's now clear recommendations for these actions. The official advice is based on an understanding of turn off the engine, take in the sails, and stay as still as possible. The strategy is based on knowledge that killer whales are primarily attracted to movement and noise, and if the boat remains motionless and doesn't provide any stimuli, the inquisitive marine mammal will usually lose interest and then move on. This distinction between attacks in the media and interactions in science is more than just semantic. It reveals two fundamentally different perspectives: the human fear of the unknown on the one hand, and the effort to understand animal behavior without anthropomorphic prejudice on the other. On objective analysis, we find little evidence of aggression or hostility. The animals don't exhibit typical hunting or attacking behaviors. There are no high-speed chases, no attempts to grab or injure prey. Rather, the actions resemble the play behavior of young orcas with each other and objects in their environment. The real question of motivation remains intriguing. If this is indeed a form of play, why did the orcas evolve this behavior? Why are they specifically interested in the rudders and not other parts of the boats? And why has the behavior increased so much in recent years? The answer could be surprisingly mundane. Just imagine that the biggest predators in the sea are actually just bored teenagers following a new viral trend. While humans suspect elaborate revenge plots or mysterious forms of communication, the young orcas may just be practicing their own version of a TikTok challenge. Now, a group of experts have come up with a theory that backs up that statement. The strange interactions with the boats could simply be a form of play amongst the orcas. Alex Zerbini, chairman of the International Whaling Commission Scientific Committee, supports that assessment. His team has observed that most of the orcas involved are juvenile males, the teenagers of the underwater world. This view becomes even more intriguing when we consider how the trend has spread. Boat ramming is passed horizontally amongst peers, much like fashion trends and dance choreography among human adolescents. The theory is made particularly compelling by previous cultural fashions. In the 1980s, one population in the Pacific suddenly began carrying dead salmon on their heads. A single animal started the strange behavior, and soon all of the orcas were doing it. After a short time, that fashion disappeared, with no apparent reason for its appearance or disappearance in the first place. The mechanism of social contagion links the two phenomena. One orca tries something new, the others find it exciting and join in, and scientists call it horizontal cultural transmission. Simply put, my friends are doing it, so I'm doing it too. The young orcas have more free time and excess energy due to the recovery of tuna stocks. In this situation, like adolescent humans on land, they'll seek out new and perhaps somewhat risky activity. Scientists would even suggest a practical aspect to these interactions. It could be a form of training for the young orcas themselves. Teenage interactions help the young animals develop skills that they need later on when hunting the bluefin tuna, and the rudder acts as a training tool. This perspective fundamentally changes our understanding. As an ephemeral behavior, the trend, like the salmon hats of the 80s, will probably disappear on its own over time. We would then be dealing not with a permanent threat to shipping, but with a fleeting fashion amongst marine mammals, a moment of youthful exploration that reminds everyone how ephemeral even the most exciting cultural phenomena can be. The regional confines of this behavioral pattern are also remarkable. Like human trends, the boat rowing trend begins locally before potentially spreading. The age structure of the orcas involved clearly shows that it is the adolescents who practice the behavior and then pass it on to their peers. The parallels with human adolescence become striking. In humans, risk-taking behavior during adolescence is partly neurobiological. The brain is still in development, impulse control is limited, and the search for new and exciting experiences is at its peak. A similar developmental process may be occurring in orcas with their complex brains, inviting everyone to consider the deeper connection between all intelligent creatures, a shared period of curiosity and play that may be as fleeting as it is significant. Alternative theories. While the teenager theory sounds plausible, there are other explanations that are much more dramatic. Have you ever heard of the white orca matriarch of the Gladys, who's supposedly on a vendetta against boats? It sounds like something out of a movie plot, but has actually been seriously taken in by scientists. This Gladys theory would suggest that an older female orca is systematically seeking revenge after a traumatic experience with a boat. The theories become something of a myth in the media, although researchers do consider it a possible explanation. It's fascinating how much that we humans tend to favor emotional explanation. The idea of a vengeful orca with personal motives sounds more exciting than bored teenagers. But scientific plausibility and emotional appeal are two different things. Scientists have developed several alternative explanations, each of which differs significantly in its basic premise. The trauma theory would suggest that an adult orca may have had a negative encounter with a boat and is now passing on cautious behavior to younger group members, a kind of collective memory. There's a lack of concrete evidence or records to support this theory. In contrast, there's a more pragmatic practice theory. The theory would suggest that the oars of the boats are a practical training object for the orcas, and the movements of the oars resemble the fin movements of their main prey. The theory is supported by the observation that orcas show similar patterns of movement when attacking oars as they do when hunting tuna. On the other hand, the competition theory sees the orcas as strategic thinkers. They could see the boats in direct competition for food sources and try to drive the intruders away. However, that theory is contradicted by the fact that orcas rarely show aggressive behavior during interactions with boats. Furthermore, attacks increased when tuna stocks were recovering and not when they were at their lowest. The stimulation theory takes a completely different approach, suggesting that orcas are actively seeking out new stimuli in an increasingly empty marine environment. The rudders simply provide just that, an unusual opportunity for interaction in their daily routine. This explanation fits well with what we know about the high intelligence and curiosity of killer whales. What all of these theories have in common is that they attempt to explain the complex behavior of a highly intelligent species whose thought processes we have only limited understanding of. None of the explanations should be dismissed out of hand, and it's likely that multiple factors are at play. Scientists have noted that interactions with boats may well be a temporary phenomenon, similar to other cultural phenomena observed in orca populations. In evaluating the data, it's striking that the game theory best fits what has been observed: young orcas exhibiting novel behavior that is spreading horizontally within their age group. The trauma and revenge theories are much more dramatic, but more difficult to prove scientifically. The practice and stimulation theories offer functional explanations that also seem plausible. Ultimately, this diversity of theories shows how difficult it is to truly understand and interpret the behavior of an alien intelligence, a fascinating mystery when it comes to marine science. Rather than continue speculating about possible causes, scientists have turned the tables and are now hunting themselves, albeit with satellite transmitters, underwater microphones, and drones. In a race against time, they're trying to predict the movements of the mysterious marine mammals before they encounter the next boat. As the number of orca boat interactions continues to rise, a specialized group of researchers has formed to investigate the incidents with scientific precision. The Grupo de Trabalho Orcas Atlanticas, or GTOA for short, works like a maritime detective agency, meticulously collecting data on each and every encounter between the orcas and the boats. When and where did the interaction occur? Which orcas were involved, and how long did it last? Every detail is recorded in order to identify patterns and ultimately make predictions. The traffic light system developed by the GTOA for the waters around the Strait of Gibraltar is particularly valuable for sailors. With green being no risk, yellow being possible risk, and red being high probability of interaction, sailors can avoid dangerous areas while adjusting their routes accordingly. The technological equipment used by scientists is reminiscent of the arsenal of a secret agent in a spy thriller. High-precision satellite transmitters attached to some of the orcas continuously transmit position data from the depths, while above, silent drones with powerful cameras capture every fin that surfaces. Underwater, a network of highly sensitive hydrophones records the orcas' every click and whistle, as well as their every conversation. To describe the challenge would be like looking for a needle in a haystack, except that the needle is constantly moving and is self-conscious. What makes it particularly difficult is the researchers are competing with an animal whose cognitive abilities are in some ways superior to that of a human. One of the most intriguing discoveries is the correlation between movements of killer whales and the migration of Atlantic bluefin tuna. Both species are influenced by the same factors, so if you can track the tuna, you can track the orcas. The insight has greatly improved forecasting models. The scientists have identified safe corridors, certain depths and routes where the likelihood of encountering an orca is significantly lower. These safe paths are now being incorporated into nautical charts and navigation apps so sailors can plan their routes accordingly. For situations where contact is unavoidable, the GTOA has developed clear instructions: stop the boat, turn off the engine, and wait until they lose interest. And the efforts are already bearing fruit. In areas where the warnings and recommendations are consistently implemented, the number of problematic encounters has been drastically reduced. The combination of real-time warnings, alternate routes, and proper emergency response has proven to be an effective strategy. What initially seemed to be a losing battle against an unpredictable force of nature has slowly become a success story of scientific methodology. Technology is helping to build a bridge, not to control the orcas, but to enable a coexistence where neither humans nor animals get harmed. The success of these measures shows that it's possible to coexist with intelligent animals without demonizing or expelling them, and the orcas remain unpredictable wild animals with their own agendas, but through understanding and respect we can learn to avoid them rather than to fight them. How to survive. Imagine this. It's vacation time and you're out on the high seas off the coast of Gibraltar, when suddenly you're attacked by a Gladys orca. What do you do next? When your boat suddenly becomes the plaything of an orca pod, the critical question becomes, what should you do in that moment? While most sailors intuitively resort to defensive measures, science points in a surprisingly opposite direction. Natural instincts will scream fight or flight when something weighing 3 tons is ramming your boat, and many sailors reflexively try to scare the orca away. One Spanish fisherman uses flares against the animals, with disastrous results. His rudder becomes completely destroyed, and his boat has to be towed. Instead of scaring the orcas away, he increased their curiosity and their tenacity. The animals interrupted his behavior as a new form of play or even a threat. Marine biologists have clear recommendations that may seem surprising but are effective. Turn off the engine, eliminate noise and vibration, lower the sails to reduce movement and interest, remain absolutely still, which signals no threat, and then wait patiently for around 20 minutes or so until the orcas lose interest. This play dead principle works because it shows the orcas that there's no longer any danger or threat from the strange object. The highly intelligent animals will lose interest in a stationary boat within 15 to 20 minutes. But why does passivity work better? Orcas are extremely sensitive to motion and sound, and any reaction from a boat, whether it's the sound of the engine starting, a thud on the water, or loud yelling, seems to be much more like an invitation to play than a deterrent to the curious marine mammals. It's similar to interacting with a playful dog. The more you run, the more intense the chase becomes. However, experts say that avoidance is still the best strategy. And if we're being honest, the interactions between orcas and ships reveal a deep fissure in our self-image as a species. Humans build harbors, chart shipping lanes, and view the oceans as transportation routes, and the idea that another species is coming into our incursions into their habitat shakes that assumption to its core. And what the orcas are showing us is actually quite simple. They're independent, complex beings with their own rules, social structures, communication, and their actions reveal a consciousness and culture that we're only beginning to understand. The term wild animal doesn't do justice to the reality of the orca, a species with its own traditions, learning processes, and view of the world. Competition for habitat and resources is increasing, especially in the Strait of Gibraltar. All over the world, human activity is encroaching upon what was once wild territory, and as we expand fishing fleets and develop shipping lanes, undisturbed habitat for marine life is shrinking. The Iberian orcas feel this particularly acutely. Their favorite food on the menu has been wiped out, and their habitat's been plowed through by fishermen and boats. Instead of dominating nature, we could learn to live with it by acknowledging and respecting its complexity. One community has already responded proactively by adjusting their routes to avoid areas where the orca encounters are common, and this simple measure has had an astonishing effect, reducing the number of interactions by up to 70 to 80%. Protecting the Iberian orca population is particularly important. The Spanish government has already published protection measures and a conservation plan. The key question remains, though, can we protect this population while also learning to manage its sometimes disruptive behavior? Our response to the situation determines the future of our relationship with these fascinating marine mammals. Can we learn to adapt our human activities rather than expect the animals to adapt to us? From early warning systems to adapted boat designs, technological developments could enable entirely new ways of living together. The story of orca-boat interactions is a window into the complex world of animal cultures and a testing ground for our understanding of non-human intelligence. It could provide a model for dealing with similar conflicts in other parts of the world, from elephants in Africa to wolves in Europe. The answer to the challenge will not only determine the fate of the Iberian orca, but could lead to a new paradigm for how we as a species interact with other intelligent inhabitants of our planet. Perhaps the most important lesson is that sometimes we need to observe, understand, and adapt rather than control. Scientists suspect that the alleged attacks by orcas on boats are actually just playful behavior, similar to human teenagers trying out new things while following trends. The phenomenon reveals a deeper lesson. Despite decades of research, we still barely understand these fascinating marine creatures. The orca reminds us that respect and coexistence are much more important than trying to control or dominate other intelligent creatures on the planet. In the end, the orcas are much smarter than we thought and more similar to us humans, and we should remember that more often. Even though the orcas are the most powerful predator in the seas, they have a right to their own free habitat.